Well, one of the questions we're asking today on France 24 is how did Israeli intelligence fail to detect what Hamas was planning? And what does that failure now mean for Israeli politics? To discuss, I'm very pleased to be joined now on the line by the analyst Yossi Mekelberg. He's an Associate Middle East Fellow at Chatham House and he joins us from London. Good afternoon to you. Thanks for finding the time to talk to us today.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Now, this is the worst security failure in Israel since the Yom Kippur War 50 years ago. The number of Israeli civilians killed is unprecedented. So can the country's leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, survive this?
These are terrible days in Israel. The numbers of people, confirmed dead, taken hostage in hospital. Really, really dark days in Israel. And I have no doubt Israel would regroup and recover from this. But it's when Netanyahu talks about reverberate, what reverberates right now is the terrible fiasco, the terrible collapse of all its policies towards Gaza, and obviously also the intelligence, as you mentioned, vis-a-vis Gaza. And intelligence is not only about gathering information, it's about how you look at this information. What actually the biases, the prejudices you enter into your analysis. And obviously, there was a set of working assumptions that collapse altogether about motivation, about capabilities. And as a result of it, we see what we see now. I know when there is such a terrible war raging, talking about what's the future of specific leaders, it might be a bit premature, but to imagine that someone that's anyway led Israel in the completely wrong direction of trying to weaken the democracy, neglecting the security of its own citizen, and hardly functioning these days in a way that you expect a leader during war. I think that by the end of this war, obviously, there will be investigation, but I don't think he can survive for much longer.
Indeed. And Israel, of course, was a profoundly divided country before what happened at the weekend with those long-running protests over judicial reform. I wonder whether you think, though, the crisis and the shocking scenes that Israelis witnessed over the weekend has sort of succeeded in bringing Israeli society together, facing that common enemy that is Hamas.
I think one of the mistakes by Hamas and probably Hezbollah as well and other enemies is really not understanding the Israeli society. I think both societies don't understand each other, and that's what the result of what we see right now. It was obvious when soldiers, pilots, other people of the security forces said they won't serve a dictatorship, they meant they're not going to do the dirty work for a government that leads it into a dictatorship. But at the same time, it was obvious to me, it was obvious to them, it was obvious to everyone. If something, even on a much smaller scale, let alone something on this horrific scale would happen, they will be the first to take the guns, to go back to the cockpits and serve the country. You see some of the people, actually veterans, high-rank veterans, colonels, brigadier generals, major generals, in advanced age, going and help with rescuing hostages, rescuing people from the houses under siege, people that actually part of the protest. So they brought together the society. But it's important to keep the society after the war together as well, but in direction of both maintaining the democratic system and forging towards peace with the Palestinians.
And, at the same time, the Israeli reservists are being called up, aren't they, in huge numbers. I believe it's the highest number in Israel's history, some 300,000 people. Presumably that means that this government is gearing up for a ground war in Gaza as well.
Well, I won't be surprised. And I think the goalposts have changed completely. If until now it was about containing Hamas, keeping Gaza as it is while improving marginally, but improving the economic conditions there, but not resolving it, I think it moves completely into eliminating Hamas. But I really think that also in this time of sadness and anger, even people calling for revenge, they need to behave as responsible statesmen and think about the day after the war. Hitting back at Hamas, it's one thing. Creating another humanitarian disaster in Gaza and even atrocities towards civilians, it is a different thing. Those are the very people that in the future Israel needs to live in peace and coexist with.
Indeed, and I wonder what you make of the argument that by bombing Gaza so intensely, rather than crushing Hamas, what this campaign may well do is create more young Palestinians who want to grow up one day to become fighters for groups like Hamas.
I think we've been in this situation before. There are conditions, again, no one can ever justify what Hamas did. This is to be condemned outright with no buts. Having said that, radicalism, extremism grows in certain conditions. So you need to deal with the root causes of this. You need to deal with where extremism, radicalisation, fundamentalism go up. And the condition of Gaza is the one that leads people, sadly, to resort to this kind of attacks and, massacring people, which under different conditions probably they would not have done it.
Yeah, but one of the reasons, of course, why emotions are running so high in Israeli society today is those hostages in Gaza. Perhaps there are about 150 people who are there right now. And I wonder what you make of this statement from a Hamas official yesterday saying that, if civilian deaths in Gaza continue, that they may execute those hostages. I mean, a grim thought indeed. Does it look to you that Hamas is sort of, borrowing from the playbook of ISIS? What did you make of that language?
If some of us, thought there might be changes in Hamas, it moving into a more responsible political movement, not only a military one, not, terrorist group, I think they lost any credibility. Yes, if they want to put themselves in the brackets of ISIS, in the brackets of Daesh, then they will be treated exactly the same. That's I think they brought on themselves. They're writing right now their own death warrant. If they are used, not enough they committed war crimes already, crimes against humanity, by doing what they did, now by using hostages as human shield, they actually make it even worse also for themselves. Let's remind ourselves that those hostages also elderly people, women, children, and it doesn't, above us, those are human beings that have done nothing to the Hamas or anything. There is no in international law, nothing of it is legal, to the contrary. And under these conditions, Israel has to decide how to deal with that. But I think also bear in mind that many of the people killed, also probably taken hostage, are actually foreign citizens from Europe, from the United States. That there are people from Nepal that lost their life coming and learning from Israeli agriculture. So I think also they make themselves more enemies. What happened now and what they are actually suggesting by threatening hostages, I think cause huge damage not only to Israel, but unfortunately huge damage to the Palestinians themselves.
All right, we will leave it there, but I want to thank you for your time and for your analysis today. Yossi Mekelberg talking to us there from Chatham House.